There's a debate going around the political sphere of YouTube on the purported shift of the political spectrum, mainly in the US. Left-leaning commentators claim that figures like Glenn Greenwald have moved towards the right. The rebuke from the right is that the left as a whole has moved further to the left. I think the right's position is perfectly encapsulated by this meme, tweeted by none other than Elon Musk. As you can see, this middle me character hasn't moved at all, yet he finds himself right of centre. While Glenn Greenwald is often the target of the left's ire, there's plenty of other figures who can be lumped into this motley crew. People I've seen accused of this are Tulsi Gabbard, Matt Taibbi, Russell Brand, Jimmy Dore, Sam Seder, Bill Maher, Joe Rogan, Elon Musk, etc. All these people could be said to be moving to the right in the past few years. You can even see this method being targeted at comedians such as Ricky Gervais and Dave Chappelle. Although this video will mainly focus on Glenn, I think it's pertinent to all the previously mentioned figures also. I predict that more and more, these figures, and probably new figures, will continue to be accused of shifting their ideology or being grifters. For those of you who don't know, Glenn Greenwald is a lawyer turned journalist who became venerable for his hand in leaking the Snowden documents and his work in Brazil. So to begin, we'll start with a channel called Progressive Voice. He's a left-wing commentator who seems fairly reasonable and knowledgeable. He uses this clip from Dave Rubin as evidence for Glenn Greenwald's shift.
So it appears that Dave Rubin actually gave his analysis on Glenn Greenwald. But anyways, as you guys know, Glenn Greenwald has made a huge shift in the past year or two, where he went from before at least being like a left-wing dude to now just being a straight-on, full-on right-winger. He's the apologist for the right wing now. That's what he does. So the new strategy from the right wing is to create this false narrative that the left-wingers or the liberals have gone so far left that it's pushed a bunch of left-wingers to the left, which is really ironic because really it's the complete opposite. This country is extremely right-wing as a political spectrum. If someone like Bernie Sanders is considered to be a socialist or far left-wing, you are in an extremely right-wing country.
Let's remember the time that Denmark's Prime Minister shut down Bernie Sanders when he tried to call Denmark a socialist country. There's obviously a lot more to this argument. This doesn't necessarily indicate that Denmark thinks Bernie Sanders is a left-wing candidate. And obviously the PM doesn't speak for the whole country. That being said, I do believe his theory here is completely wrong. Bernie Sanders' call for open borders and his praise of Fidel Castro's regime in Cuba would be considered radical for most countries in the world.
Because Bernie Sanders on a political scale is really a centrist. Maybe hypothetically even right-wing.
Yeah, right.
Are Andrew Sullivan, Matt Taibbi, Glenn Greenwald, all of a sudden going, whoa. I mean, all of a sudden it moved so far, so fast, it left a whole wake of people who would have called themselves, I don't even think moderately left. For some of those guys, they would have said they were pretty far left. And now all of a sudden... Glenn Greenwald
was bananas lefty. He was bananas lefty. He used to call me a racist on Twitter all the time. Now he's just repeating everything I said 5 years ago.
As Dave Rubin says here, he was calling him racist on Twitter all the time. So it's just kind of like, my question is, what happened, right? So obviously Dave Rubin, his diagnosis here is undeniable. He says, Glenn Greenwald was a bananas lefty. He used to call me a racist on Twitter all the time. Now he's just repeating everything I said 5 years ago. I don't know how anyone could this statement is just factual in what he says, right? So none of us are debating the statement because it's correct. If anything, we're talking about this because it's correct.
The Progressive Voice doesn't provide any evidence other than it's true because David Rubin said it. Neither himself nor David Rubin gives any information on what Glenn is saying now that makes him right-wing that he wasn't saying a couple of years ago. It's hard to counter this argument because there's no substance to it. David Rubin said something, and I agree with it. Therefore, it's undeniable. Next, we have Sam Seder's The Majority Report, talking about the same clip of David Rubin.
Also, I do have to wait. 5 years ago was what, like 2017, right? I could swear Dave Rubin was still claiming to be still a liberal in 2017 and not a full blown right winger. So if Glenn Greenwald is quoting him from 5 years ago, now that Glenn Greenwald is a right winger, I guess we can extrapolate from that hey, what do you know? Dave Rubin's been a right winger that whole time he was claiming to actually still be a liberal.
This is a complete non sequitur. Oh, because Glenn Greenwald called you a racist, that means you were in fact a right-winger. It's the same illogical conclusion. Someone accuses someone else of being something and doesn't provide any evidence, and you take it on face value because you agree with it already.
Rubin's right. Rubin's right.
He's right. I mean, maybe Taibbi wants to step in and clarify his position on this.
Matt Taibbi pretty much already has weighed in on this. It's also funny how they give Matt Taibbi the benefit of the doubt because they like him, unlike Greenwald. Here's Taibbi on Rising, defending Glenn.
A report in the Daily Beast raised the hilarious but ridiculous question, is Glenn Greenwald the new master of right-wing media? Journalist Matt Taibbi assessed this crucifixion of Greenwald, saying that the first response to any criticism of the mainstream media is to accuse people of being aligned with the right.
Taibbi here is completely correct in his analysis. Greenwald flayed the left-wing media for their take on Russiagate and the Hunter Biden laptop story. And people like these hate him for it. The difference in standards is showcased in the debate between Greenwald and the Majority Report's own Sam Seder. Greenwald was able to destroy him because Sam Seder was mindlessly following the narrative around Russiagate. Nevertheless, Greenwald is critical of the left-wing media's false narrative around Russiagate, and Sam Seder comes across as desperate and foolish. As the story unravelled, even more so. Another example of Greenwald fighting the left's false narrative is the Hunter Biden's laptop story. Greenwald rightfully chastised the left-wing media as they tried to brush off the story as false information. The story was even censored on social media sites like Twitter. Then all our favourite left-wing commentators looked stupid as the Washington Post confirmed the story and its authenticity. Greenwald was incisive enough to go against the left-wing narrative that it was Russian disinformation. Although he was going against the left, it wasn't him that had changed, it was journalistic standards that had. Let's look at Seder's, I'm sure, very insightful commentary at the time.
A lot of money that was exchanging hands, like a lot of money.
Mm-hmm. And you, sir, you still have a copy of the hard drive, is that correct?
Correct.
Would you be willing to share it with me? I would love to.
I'd have to talk to my attorney about that.
That was so
First off, I'm sort of
horrible.
shocked. This is the first time that question has come up. Hey, can we see that hard drive that we were trying to build an entire narrative about for 3 months? Can I see that?
This was before the story was authenticated, and although Seder doesn't outright say it's fake information, he does try to murky the waters by saying the right was building a narrative that was true.
Also, pretty sure it's pretty fucking illegal for the computer repair guy to take a copy of his customer's hard drive. Computer repair guy to take a copy of his customer's hard drive.
That's actually not true at all. If you abandon your laptop at a repair shop, they usually have a clause that states that they actually own the laptop then. Imagine a laptop was dropped into you, you did all the work fixing it, and the guy didn't show up. All that time wasted. In general, if you abandon property, it's no longer yours. The irony that people crying misinformation are the ones spreading it. Again, Glenn was right to defy the left-wing narrative and didn't look as dumb as these guys in the end. Greenwald also called out AOC in the recent aid sent by the US to Ukraine. 57 Republicans voted no, and a total of 0 Democrats. That means that every single Democrat, including AOC and her quote-unquote progressive squad, wanted to send $40 billion to the Ukraine, a huge escalation in war efforts. Since when did the left become the party of war? This is just another example of how the left changed, not Glenn Greenwald and his anti-war stance. Look at this graph. When asked, the US government should take steps to restrict false information online, even if it limits freedom of info. Democrat-leaning folks went from 40% in 2018 to 65% in 2021. This is a huge shift in just 3 years. In 3 years, Democrats went from the majority opposing it to the majority supporting it. Once again, Greenwald didn't change. The left did. Tulsi Gabbard, Joe Rogan, Glenn Greenwald, Matt Taibbi, Russell Brand have all come out against the censorship that we're seeing from big tech and big government, while people like Sam Seder are becoming increasingly terse on the subject. Since when is it a left-wing quality to be pro-censorship and pro-war?